Hi, good afternoon. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to Inside Sports Talk with your host, Johanna-Rosalye. And I am joined by my amazing co-host, Ed Cole. Hi, how are you today? Glad to have you and see you this beautiful
Hello.
Wednesday.
Hello. Good afternoon. Happy Wednesday.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Good. How's it going?
Good, great. Excited to talk some, for most part, excited to talk some NBA playoffs, which we will get into
Yeah,
the
for the most
later
part.
part. Yes, why
Yeah.
I'm not so thrilled, but not surprised though. A lot of NBA playoff action. We have now the Western and Eastern Conference finals that are happening. Those did start yesterday on Tuesday night. But first, before we go ahead and get into those, I want to go ahead and just have a little bit of a recap of what happened and transpired between the Bucks and Celtics um, series for the Eastern semifinals. Excuse me. Boston did win that series, overtaking the Bucks. 4-3 on that series, and the last game was 109-81. So Boston came out on top. It seemed like the defending champs were gonna go ahead and make a run for it, and that actually was not so. Ed, how did you see the series pan out for these two teams, and more especially for the Boston Celtics that are now facing the Miami Heat?
Joe, it was strange because the way that Boston blew game 5 and they gave Milwaukee a 3-2 lead going home, the way they collapsed at home in that game 5 and I was thinking I'm thinking I'm sure a lot of people are thinking, how are they going to go to Milwaukee? How can they rebound from the way they lost game 5 when they had a double digit lead and Milwaukee just scratched and clawed back and won that game based on their defense? But they went to Milwaukee, won game 6, gritted it out. And then, of course, you mentioned game 7. They won by 28 on a night they hit 22 3-pointers and Milwaukee hit 4. So nobody really, other than Giannis, really contributed for the Bucks. And, of course, them not having Chris Middleton really hurt. And you could definitely tell in that series, especially in game 7, when they needed another scorer to go alongside Giannis, because Giannis is going to do everything he needs to do, Joanna. He's going to put up 25 or 30 shots because he has to, because he really has nobody that can score other than Drew Holiday. And I believe Drew was 9 for 21 that night. So Drew was off as well. And nobody else really stepped up other than Giannis. We talk about it a lot with the Mavericks when it comes to Luka. Who's going to step up for the Mavericks when Luka's doing everything as well? He's going to need some help, especially tonight as they start the Western Conference Finals. But going back to Milwaukee, it was just Boston was the much superior team. They were the much deeper team. They have more scorers. They have better defenders. And of course, it would have been different if Middleton would have been there. But the series was what it was, and Boston won game 6 and 7, and they are where they are right now, even though they're down 1-0 in the East Finals.
All right, let's not get too head into that one. But yes, Boston did surprise. Everyone was expecting to have the defending champs go ahead and possibly even make another run for the finals, and that wasn't the case. You pretty much summarized that all there for the entire series between the Bucks and the Celtics. The only thing I will go ahead and just mention to back you up there is, yes, you can't have Giannis be the only one, carrying the team. It was, he did it last year for the most part. He did get injured. Bucks were able to go ahead and pull through. But you can only do that for so much before, it's going to take a toll not only on your player, but on the team. And that's exactly what I see that happen for the Bucks. And then we go ahead and go on to the Miami Heat and the Philadelphia 76ers on the other side for the East semifinals, where Miami went ahead and won that series 4-2, which they did advance in that game, did take place already for the game 1 of the Eastern Finals. So not really too much of a surprise there. The number 1 team in the East beating and knocking out the Philadelphia 76ers. There's been a lot of talk with the Philadelphia 76ers, especially with James Harden and the expectations of what was, supposed to come out of James Harden, with this coming over to the Philadelphia 76ers and pretty much not being met. And now kind of like, okay, where does James Harden stand? Where do the Philadelphia 76ers stand? And also Doc Rivers. So, because this was a huge test for them, thinking that, okay, maybe they will be able to get further ahead in the playoffs this season, especially after no longer having Ben Simmons on the team. And they did, I will give the Philadelphia 76ers credit and Doc Rivers for making it this far along. However, I did expect more out of James Harden. Yes, granted, he's not the player that he was once before, but I think that James Harden can still be more of a presence. And, I had more expectations out of him, and it seems like there was something of James Harden that was, I would say, not on, if that makes sense. That
Oh yeah, there were a lot of things that were off with Harden, and of course Daryl Morey was hoping he was going to get the Houston James Harden that he knew down in Houston when he was running the organization down there with the Rockets, or he would get a semblance of what he saw in Brooklyn. The moments when James Harden was really good with Brooklyn, and him and Kyrie and KD were working together. Of course, they didn't play together that much because everybody was dealing with injuries and guys were in and out of the lineup. So you really never got to saw what Durant, Irving, and Harden could have done in Brooklyn, but it didn't come to be. And we can tell that James is he's a step slower because Father Time is undefeated. We know how Father Time works, Joanna. James is older. He's got a player option this year, so it's his option whether he wants to come back to Philadelphia. If he doesn't want to come back, he's a free agent, and he can negotiate with somebody else and potentially end up with another team. I don't know if Philly would even want to entertain the fact of him coming back unless he's committed to committed to go all in on the Sixers organization and what they're trying to do. And if he can get himself back into some playing shape, get him back into better playing shape, and he can prove to the organization that he is all in on making a run to a championship next year. If not, then it's a business move. Things have to be done.
Yeah, and that's what concerns me more out of the Philadelphia 76ers is exactly that in James Harden. We're not just, give someone else a shot that's going to go ahead and be able to pull the 76ers through and be that piece that they need. Because yes, James Harden is there. He does have his moments, but he's, again, not that player that we've known him to be. And there's just, I don't know, it seems like it's more mental for James Harden than anything else.
Oh, it could be. Very well could be. Mm-hmm.
And then, Doc Rivers, I have to give him credit for doing, the coaching and what was needed of him for the Philadelphia 76ers and see what next season comes of the team. And hopefully, they can make it to the finals. They've turned it. I won't say that the Philadelphia 76ers have definitely turned this team around tremendously, being to where they were 2 seasons ago to where they are now. That's something that you really don't see in the NBA or in any team, any professional team, to be able to turn around a team or an organization so quickly.
And it's tough because he had to deal with the whole Ben Simmons situation, and then they dealt him in the middle of the season. Then they brought Harden over, and then Joel Embiid's in and out of the lineup. So you really can't really, it's like Brooklyn. You can't really get a full lineup together because guys are injured, they're in and out, and you've got a guy in Harden that's coming over. He's clearly not what he used to be. He's trying to get used to a new situation, and he's trying to get used to Doc, and Doc's trying to get used to him, and he's trying to get used to his new teammates, and all this chemistry that's not there. You can only go so far when the chemistry and the bond and the brotherhood is not really there as far as the players are concerned. Even though they are star players, they still have to get to know each other, and they have to learn the system like Harden had to learn the system the way the Sixers do it.
Yes, and even with the chemistry is there, you still will have those moments, which we'll go ahead and get into as once we start talking Suns. But yes, that chemistry is, one of the biggest pieces with your when it comes to a team and you're out there in the court. And speaking about chemistry, also is the Golden State Warriors and the Grizzlies. Golden State Warriors advanced, winning that series 4-2. That final game was 96-110. That was Friday night. That was the defining game for the Golden State Warriors to go ahead and advance. So it seems like the Grizzlies, we're gonna come up and maybe pull through and even out that series, but Golden State Warriors didn't put a stop to it and said, no, we'll go ahead and be closing this out. They did, with them advancing, and we'll be facing the Dallas Mavericks, which we'll get into here in a moment. But I will have to give credit to Memphis, to the Memphis Grizzlies, because that's a team that went under the radar, and a lot were did not expect of them to make it this far. And I would say this is a team going into next season to go ahead and keep your eye on, because if they made it this far this season, how much further they can go ahead and make it next season.
Oh yeah, I love what Taylor Jenkins did with the Memphis Grizzlies. Ja's a superstar in his own right. So even when Ja went down, they're still a young, scrappy, defensive-minded basketball team, and they're clearly a different team. Every team that loses a superstar like that, they're not quite the same they are as if Ja would have been in there. We all know that, but the fact that they pushed it to a game 6 and they lost by 14, it's hard, Joe, when Steph and Clay get 59 points. It's when those two are on and they're hitting 14 3-pointers, it's hard for Memphis or any basketball team to do anything when a team like that is rolling from 3-point range, and they're just kicking it offensively. And then defensively, they kick it up a notch because Mike Brown was the interim head coach at the time. And we know Mike Brown is a defensive-minded head coach compared to Steve Kerr. Steve Kerr is more of an offensive-minded head coach. So it's a different kind of mindset when Mike Brown is coaching the team as opposed to Coach Kerr, who I believe will be coaching tonight.
Yes, no, definitely. And then I want to go ahead and go on into Sunday night's game with the Dallas Mavericks and the Phoenix Suns, which we have a guest coming on and joining us, Craig Fouhy, Sports Anchor for ABC 15 here in Phoenix, Arizona. Thank you, Craig, for jumping on. We're talking the Western semifinals. Mavericks and the Suns, 123 to 190. That was just an abysmal and just so painful game to watch, with Dallas winning that series 4-3 on that pivotal game 7. And it still gives me chills to even think about it and even more talk about it. So we all saw what happened there. Craig, you were there. I was there. I want to get your thoughts and what was going through your mind as you were watching that game, especially that first half.
Well, it was a shock. I mean, we knew it was a game 7. We knew that the Suns had the best record in the entire NBA coming into that series, and they just failed to show up in game 6. We thought coming home, though, for game 7, being on their home court, they were just going to be fantastic and play out of their minds, and they did anything but. And when Luka Doncic has 27 points at halftime, matching the entire Suns team's 27 points, you know something's wrong.
Yeah, that was just devastating. And one of the things that I saw too, and we talked about here as we were leading into the Suns, is chemistry. It seems like the chemistry just dissipated from the series. As the series went along leading up to game 7, we saw what happened in Dallas. And then also one thing that I saw is that the Phoenix Suns, they just seemed that they had turned off. It seemed like they were just exhausted by the time that they went, the further this playoff contention went on, and especially playing Dallas, because they definitely stepped up. And this is what exactly I was afraid of. And I mentioned it to Ed Cole and to a couple others, that was my worry, because Dallas, they had everything to lose, and they were in a good position coming into the playoffs versus the Suns. And they made franchise history, winning those 64 games and many other, historic moments for the franchise. And I think, in my opinion, that's probably what took a toll out of the Phoenix Suns as the further along they went into the playoffs.
No, I think you're absolutely right, Johanna. I mean, I think when you look at this team, they had their backs against the wall. They had the best record in the league. They had the pressure on them, clearly. The Mavericks came into that series without a lot of pressure on them because they had gotten through the first round against Utah, and they came in and saying, you know what, no one's giving us any credit. People are saying Suns in 4 in this series, and the pressure it just got tighter and tighter and tighter for the Suns the more the Mavericks kept winning games in that series. And I think part of that issue with the Suns is the backups just were failing to come through in the playoffs, and that put more pressure on the starters. And so when Cam Payne is not playing at his best in the playoffs, that puts more pressure on Chris Paul. And when other guys in that backup role are not playing their best, that puts more pressure on Devin. And when guys behind, DeAndre Ayton aren't playing their best, that puts more pressure on DeAndre. So I think it was a combination of a whole lot of things, with the pressure and the backups not playing to their capabilities, and then just lack of adjustments during the games that just the Suns failed to make.
Craig, talking about DeAndre, we all heard about what could or could not have happened on the sidelines between him and Coach Williams. What do you make of that? And what do you think the future is? Of course, DeAndre is a restricted free agent. Do you think he would even want to come back? I don't know if Robert Sarver is going to pay him the money that he wants to pay him, because clearly he didn't pay him last year because he thought he wasn't worthy of it. So the way he played the season and the way things ended, do you think that Sarver they could come to some amicable agreement? He could come back, or do you think he's going to go ahead and get out of here?
Well, Ed, if there's anybody that can massage that situation, it's Monty Williams, right? I mean, he is such a genuine human being. He's down to earth. He's a really honest guy. And I think when, like I said, the pressure was getting to everybody in that situation, and when they were just blown out in Game 7 by the Mavs, I think everybody was frustrated, and I think the tensions were way up here. And so things said in the heat of the moment are probably just that, things said in the heat of the moment. And when cooler minds prevail after a few days, maybe you can sit down and talk. But my guess is the Suns will give him a one-year offer sheet this summer and try to keep him around at about $16 million and let them buy some time to see if they can get a deal worked out, or maybe a sign and trade with another team. But I think they see him as valuable in what they're doing. And clearly he had career numbers this year, so he played very, very well throughout the season. I just think now, if it was something about, I'm done, I quit, I don't want to be on this team anymore, that's a whole nother level, right, of conversation that has to happen. And so I don't know exactly what was said, but it wasn't good. Let's say that. It wasn't good.
And I want to go back to something that you said, Craig, with the pressure that was mounting and a lot of factors that took him to play, not only in that Game 7, but throughout the series as it went on. One of the things in the adjustments that I thought that they were going to make, and it was just a continuing of not making that adjustment or to make it better. And I have to give credit to Dallas, for doing what they did and preventing the Phoenix Suns from penetrating the paint, putting that pressure there, avoiding for the Phoenix Suns to go ahead and get those easy points. And another thing is also locking it down to where the Phoenix Suns couldn't even go for those rebounds, secure those rebounds, which were very important. And we saw how many second chance points were missed from the Phoenix Suns.
No, you're absolutely right. And that's, I think there were two things that really happened. And one was they pressured Chris Paul completely up and down the court, right? From the time the ball came in bounds, Chris Paul had someone in his face. So that's, at 37 years old, that's a lot to work instead of just kind of jogging down the court. It's a lot to have to evade a defender all the length of the court. And number two, they took away Devin Booker. They doubled Devin quite a bit and said, basically, anybody can beat us but Devin. We're not going to let him shoot and make the points that he typically does. So they took Devin away, pressured Chris Paul, and then they just out-hustled the Suns on defense. I mean, I just thought they were so much more energetic and inspired than the Suns were in that series. And yes, the Suns won 3 games, but you really, when you look at the Mavs and the way they played down in Dallas, those 3 games were just phenomenal. And then here in Game 7, you can't take anything away from what Jason Kidd did in terms of adjustments to try and take things away that the Suns had success with during the regular season. And the Suns didn't respond. And again, I think the more things went against them, the more pressure mounted and the more they tightened up. And anyone that's been around athletics know you can't play when you're tight. You have to relax. You have to be loose and you have to play your best. You can't do it when you're uptight and nervous. So I think those things just counted against the Suns.
Yes, definitely. Go ahead, Ed.
So, Craig, this is without question the most catastrophic loss in Suns playoff history. To me, does the organization take a step back because of this loss and the way this series ended with all the expectations? Again, them getting almost 70 wins this season and coming up short in the second round.
I don't think so, Ed. I don't think they'll take a step back other than the public pressure that's on them right now. We had the Jason Rowley and James Jones apology letter that came out on Monday, and that's not gone over well on social media, saying we win together, we lose together. The fans were behind them all the way this season. And I don't want to take anything away from a 64-win season, right? That's phenomenal, the best in franchise history. So you can't take that away from them. But I think now they go back to the drawing board and say, and as Monty told us on Monday, how do we prepare for the playoffs better? We obviously had a system that worked in the regular season, but now what do we need to tweak? What do we need to do differently to take on a team in a 7-game series? So I think they're going to go back to the drawing board this summer and look at everything. I mean, from Chris Paul and Devin all the way down to the 14th, 15th guy on the roster. I think everything will be looked at, including schemes.
The last question I have with regards to the Phoenix Suns before we move on to what we have ahead here for the finals on each conference is there's been a lot of talk about Chris Paul and the Phoenix Suns and the opportunity that they had this playoff season. So, and I do have to agree that this was the Phoenix Suns' best opportunity to go ahead and make it to the playoffs. They granted they did, I mean, to the finals. Granted, they did get there last season. There were so many obstacles and they persevered. This season, there were so many other ways that made it easier for them, but they fell short. You know, with the Clippers, with the Lakers, even with the Denver Nuggets. So next season, we're seeing how these teams have been built up, and now they're going to be in better shape. And then also you just bring in, you know, with Dallas, they're getting better. So there's a lot of those teams that are building up, and the players too, when we see, you know, those changes that will be also coming. So their Phoenix Suns are not going to be in such a position as they were this season. It's going to be more difficult. Do you agree with that they lost that chance, not only the Phoenix Suns, but even, you know, Chris Paul and Devin Booker?
I do. I mean, there's so many things there's so many factors that go into it, right? I mean, anyone around sports for a long time knows that the ball has to bounce your way. The officials have to make the calls that are in your favor. Everybody has to stay healthy. You have to have the right scheme, and you have to have the right, you know, chemistry with a team. There's so much more to it than just raw numbers, right? Yeah, they got 64 wins, but there's so much more to that. Do you rest players more in the regular season? Do you worry about getting that home court advantage? Do you not? There's so many factors that go into it, but I agree with what you're saying. It was a great opportunity. We thought that bracket that they were in to get through the Pelicans and then go through the Mavs to get to the Western Conference Finals was probably the easiest they could have gotten. And obviously we saw what the Pelicans did to them in that first round series. They matched up really well with the Suns and gave them fits. And so it took them 6 games to get through that one. And when you're, you know, when you're 37 like Chris Paul, I mean, you've got limited number of seasons left. So we hope he stays healthy and we hope he can continue. But the Suns need to address that backup point guard, and whether that's Cam Payne or someone else, I think that's going to be a critical component going into the offseason.
Yeah. Well, we can keep talking Suns, and but I do want to go ahead and get into a little bit of the Eastern Finals, Game 1, which did happen last night, Tuesday. Celtics and the Heat, you know, pretty close game in 107-118, a number 1 team in the East. So there's a chance that the number 1 team can make it to the finals. How do you see this series predict that will go as it moves on?
You know, it's interesting. I think all the Las Vegas odds makers had Miami winning Game 1, but they had the Celtics winning the series. And I think when you look at that series, the Celtics are built for the finals. But they had some issues yesterday with Marcus Smart and Al Horford missing the game because of injury and then the COVID health and safety protocols. So those things change. Like I said just a few minutes ago about the Suns, you have to stay healthy. Everybody has to stay on point. And when a key player, look at the Bucks, you know, losing Chris Middleton for the playoffs, and they lost, right? And so when you lose a key player or two, that makes a huge difference in a series, especially when it's only 7 games and only going to take a week and a half, 2 weeks to get through. So I still like the Celtics in the series, but Miami proved that they can play very good basketball. So I wouldn't be surprised if the number 1 seed makes it out of the East.
And I love this series, Craig, because these are 2 lockdown defensive teams, 2 of the better defensive teams in the NBA. And you saw what Miami did in that third quarter. They made all the adjustments they need, being down 8 at halftime. And they come out on a 22-2 run, Craig, and they force all these turnovers. And Jason Tatum, they completely shut him down in the second half. And then Jimmy Butler went off for 27 in the second half. I believe he was 11 of 12 from the free throw line. So he was so active on the offensive and defensive end. But then when the Miami Heat decide to lock down defensively, they're very hard to beat, even though Boston is as strong as they are. But as you mentioned, not having the defensive player of the year really hurt them last night. Not having Al Horford, who played really well against Milwaukee, that hurt them as well. But Robert Williams stepped up. So it's kind of like, for me, for Boston, if Marcus is going to play in Game 2, or if he doesn't play in Game 2, it's like Dallas. Who's going to step up to help out Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum? Who are the others that Shaq lovingly refers to? Who are the others that are going to step up and help out Boston?
Ed, you're right. You're exactly right. And these are the situations where you never know who's going to be that guy, right? A year ago, it was Campaign. We saw Campaign step up for the Phoenix Suns, right? You don't know who that guy is going to be in the playoffs that has an opportunity and seizes that opportunity and ends up getting a nice contract as a result of it. And that's a difficult part. And we talk about that with depth with the Suns, right? They had a lot of depth. We felt like they were coming into the playoffs ready to go to the finals because of their depth on the bench. And in terms of the Celtics, we saw some guys step up last night. Can they do that repeatedly throughout a 7-game series? And we'll see. I mean, it's going to be, I think both of these series, the East and the West, are really good finals.
Yes, I definitely agree with you. And then going on to the West, which we slightly covered, the Dallas Mavericks and the Golden State Warriors facing off tonight at 6 p.m. I don't know how to feel about this. Second to the wanting to see the Phoenix Suns face off the Warriors. I think, Dallas is the second best to face off the Warriors, especially with what we saw and how they came out against the Phoenix Suns. So I don't know what Jason Kidd's game plan going off against the Warriors, because we see that the Warriors and the Suns have some similarities in the style of play that they have. So if he's going to go ahead and come out with that same approach against the Warriors, I think this has a possibility of going to a game 7. We have Luka Doncic, he's just, keeps getting better and better. My respect to Luka and what he was able to do and being unstoppable, really. As much pressure as you put on the guy, he just kept on going. It seems like you just lit a fire under him more than anything. Yeah. So how do you see this series, Craig?
I agree with you on Luka. Can you imagine, Ed, if we roll back the clock and the Suns take Luka Doncic instead of DeAndre Ayton in 2018, what that back court would be like with Devin Booker and Luka? I mean, they'd be unstoppable, right? And I know we can't do that. We can't turn the clock back. But Luka is a phenomenal player. And when you look at that draft in terms of Marvin Bagley and DeAndre Ayton and Luka Doncic, the top 3 picks, one of those guys is a superstar already, and that's Luka Doncic, right? And DeAndre is a budding star. He's on the rise, but he's not where Luka is at this point. So I think Luka goes into that series, again, with nothing to lose, right? The Warriors are picked to win the series. You've got Steph Curry. You've got Draymond Green. You have all the components on that team. Klay Thompson, you keep going down the list. You've got a lot of components. So I think going into that, I think Jason Kidd says, let's do what we did with the Suns. Let's take Steph Curry out of this game as much as we can and double him and put pressure on Draymond. And I think you take those 2 components out and make other guys try to beat you in this series. Ed, what do you think?
Yeah, and it's similar to what Golden State's going to go against with Dallas. They're going to say, Luka, go ahead and get yours. As long as Jalen Brunson, as long as Dorian Finney-Smith, as long as Spencer Dinwiddie as long as he doesn't do what he did to the Suns on Sunday when he gets 30 off the bench, as long as Davis Bertans doesn't shoot threes and Kleba doesn't hit threes, Luka, you can get 50 a night if you want to. You can get 60. As long as nobody else does anything for you, as long as nobody else contributes, we're good.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's what I think the Suns had in mind when they went into that series, but it didn't work out so well.
Yeah, and that you mentioned the threes, Ed, that's one of the things I think is going to bring these 2 teams neck and neck. We saw the Mavericks, how they were go ahead and capitalizing on those threes and how they were just, phenomenal. And that's how they were able to go ahead and also put a stop to the Phoenix Suns. And the Golden State Warriors, they're known for threes. Steph Curry, just shooting 3 after 3 after 3, especially when he's hot. So I think this is going to be a great matchup when you look at it at that angle as well.
I agree with you completely. And nobody would have guessed that the Mavericks would have hit the way they did in game 7 against the Suns, or that the Suns couldn't hit a basket, right, at all. I mean, they couldn't buy a basket in that game early. So it was a total disappointment for the Suns. But on the other hand, talking about the Mavs coming into the Western Conference Finals, they were phenomenal from 3-point land. They couldn't miss a shot. And so if they keep that up, they're going to be a tough opponent for the Warriors for sure.
So I have to ask the tough question. Who do you see going into the finals? Who do you want to see?
Well, I don't know if I want now, because I don't have a horse in this race, but I think the Warriors are the better team in the West, and I think they'll survive a 7-game series. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Miami win over the Celtics, even though Las Vegas has the Celtics winning that. I haven't looked at the odds today. They may have changed after last night's game. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Miami and Golden State in this final series.
What about you, Ed?
I like Miami, Golden State too, but I would not be surprised, depending on if Marcus Smart comes back. Boston's a different team, especially
Yes.
defensively, but Miami is so deep and everybody contributes and they all play really good defense. And if Tyler Hero comes off the bench and he hits threes, that just makes them that much more of a hard opponent to stop. And then once Jimmy Buckets gets started, he kicks it into another gear, Craig, once he hits the playoffs, doesn't he?
Yes, he does. You're absolutely right, Ed. I mean, there's phenomenal players, and that's what I love about the playoffs. The best players rise to the occasion, right? And you see these phenomenal performances night in and night out by guys that you don't always expect. And some you do, but others you don't. But it's going to be fun. Both series are going to be fun series to watch.
Yes, definitely. I'll be working on homework and having the game on the background, so I'm not missing what's going on because this is going to be one for the Bucks.
Good for you.
Well, thank you very much, Craig. Appreciate you coming
Craig.
on. Always an honor.
It's great to see you. Thanks so much, you guys. Great to see you both.
Yes.
Thank you. And before we
Thank
let you
you,
go, can you let our listeners and our viewers know where it is that they can find you?
Yes, I'm on Twitter at Fouhy on Sports, at Fouhy on Sports, spelled Fouhy on Sports. And then, of course, on ABC 15 nightly. And we have a show coming up this Saturday night after the Eastern Conference Finals that we'll have Stephen Hunter on. And Molly Miller is joining us from Grand Canyon University. So we have some good experts talking basketball. And we're going to talk a lot about the Suns on Saturday night on ABC 15.
Well, I bet you will.
Thank you for sharing. I'll definitely be tuning in and watching.
Yes.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you, Craig.
Take care.
You have a good night.
Thank you.
All right, sir. Thank you.
See ya.
Oh,
Right. That was amazing having the wonderful Craig Fouhy joining us, talking sports. I know we can just keep on talking Phoenix Suns and basketball and much more with him. He's just so knowledgeable on it all.
just a legend in the sports industry, especially here in Arizona.
Yes, definitely it is. So we have, oh my gosh, so much more to talk about. We're going to go ahead and get into some baseball, Ed, and move into that avenue. We have the National League West, the National League, what is it? The National League East as well. That's, with the New York Mets, that I want to go ahead and jump and talk about how they're just, how they're already number one and how they made a turnaround from the last season to this season. Yes, granted, we're just barely, starting the baseball season and there's still a lot of play left, but come on, I have to give credit to those Mets, Ed.
Yeah. They're playing really well, playing great basketball, great baseball on the road. They're 13-6 on the road, Joanna, so they can go away from Citi Field and they can win. And a sign of a great championship caliber organization, Joanna, is the fact that you can go on the road and win. I mean, you're expected to at least split your home games. My goodness, if you can't win at least 41 games at home in the course of a season, or 40 games, it's 81 games, right? So at least 41 games, then and just do really well on the road. But they talk about that vaunting pitching staff that they have, that the Mets have, and it's just a different mindset. Just in years recent, they were near close to cellar dwellers in the East, but now they're 10 games over 500. They feel good about themselves, and they're in really good position come 40 games into the season. They've got a 6-game lead on Miami. They just have to keep it going. No,
definitely. You have them going at 11-8 at home, and then 13-6 away. So that's very impressive coming from the Mets, because typically we'll see them doing just the opposite. So definitely, a team to look out for it. And I think for many, it was just a team that they weren't expecting much of this season, because even if they do start winning, then they end up taking a toll and then start doing the opposite.
Yeah, when you look at that lineup they have, as far as pitching, Scherzer, Bassett, Carrasco, Walker, I mean, that's a hard pitching staff to get through, Joanna, and be successful against. So if those guys can stay healthy and they continue to hit the baseball, and they play really smart baseball, they don't commit a lot of errors, and they play smart baseball, then they can be around for a while. They can be on top of the East for the entire season. Of course, we know 162 games, there's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be a lot of lulls, a lot of high points, and a lot of low points. But if they can have more high points than low points, then clearly they're going to be in a good position to win the division and make a good run in the playoffs.
Definitely. I do definitely see them making a run to the postseason. But the other one that I want to talk about a little bit is the American League West. We have the Houston Astros at number 1, 24-13. And then we have the Los Angeles Angels, 24-15. They're just one game behind Houston. So that's going to be a very tight race. And it seems like it's just going to be neck and neck. We have the Houston Astros going 15-9 away on the road. So very, very impressive. Even at home, they're 9-4. And the Angels are 12-7 at home and 12-8 on the road. So this is, we've seen, the Los Angeles Angels. They threw a no-hitter with the rookie Detmers just last week. We have the Houston Astros and Dusty Baker just, getting past that shadow that cloud, I should say, actually, that's been hanging over against them, and with the whole scandal with the cheating and all of that. But they're just, not letting that get to them and go, getting away from that. And they're just not turning back, and they're just being the Astros that they've known to be and winning games, and nothing, really is stopping them either.
And here's two things that really stand out to me stats wise. I love stats. The fact that Houston has played 24 of their 37 games on the road, Joanna. So that means they're going to, toward the end of the season, they're going to have a lot more home games. And we know how well they play at Minute Maid Park. Also, number 2, a stat for me, they're plus 46 on the run differential. That means they're scoring runs like they always do. They do it every season, and they play, and their pitching staff's really good. So plus 46, that puts them in a good position to continue to win. Same thing with the Angels. They're plus 49 on the run differential.
Yep.
So 191 runs, I believe that's second in the league, the second most runs in the league scored to the Los Angeles Dodgers. So the two teams in LA are scoring a lot of runs, Joanna. So if the Angels continue to hit the ball the way they do, if they continue to crack those bats and win and keep winning games, they're going to keep pace with the Astros, and that'll be a great race the entire season.
And along with that race and race once we get to the postseason, if this still ends up being what we see the later half of the season for baseball, for MLB, and speaking about run differentials, at plus 74, the New York Yankees. Yeah, they're 27-9, number 1 in the American League East, 5 games ahead of Tampa Bay. So the Yankees have definitely turned their, from last season to this season, they've completely turned it around.
I was just looking at that, Joanna. You and I were on the same wavelength. They've only given up 104 runs in 36 games. Wow, that's solid pitching. And 178 runs. Of course, the Bronx Bombers are back. So they keep scoring and getting that kind of distance at a clip, pitching and hitting wise. And you're 14-4 at home. They're holding court at Yankee Stadium, and on the road, 13-5. That's a really good baseball team. They can win in any stadium they go to. They can win.
Definitely. And, speaking of being on the road, 13-5 for the Yankees. And then at home, just close enough, 14-4. So that's definitely, see what they go ahead and continue to do as the season moves along. But as we go ahead, that is very impressive.
So they're winning 3/4 of their games, 75% winning percentage through 36 games. That is thoroughly impressive. That is outstanding baseball.
Definitely not what I expected out of the Yankees this season. But as we go ahead and go on to talk National League West, and just in time, we have our next guest, Brett Lauren from Too Tall Sports Podcast, and a friend as well. Hi, Brett. Thank you for joining us and coming on so we can talk some baseball just in time to talk some National League West and, the Duel of the West, like I like to call it, with the Dodgers, the Padres. We have the Giants in there, and, we in the Diamondbacks and the Rockies. So, which, and you're on the West Coast here in California.
First of all, let me say it's great to be back with you guys. It's been way too long.
It has, yes.
No, I'm happy to be here, and I got the end of that with you guys talking about the Yankees, and yeah, they're playing as the best baseball in the entire league. So they're very impressive right now. But as far as the NL West, I mean, most people would agree it's the best division in baseball right now. Even the last place team, Rockies, are 17-19. So at worst, that's better than a lot of other clubs on the bottom of the barrel here in the National League. So it's a really tight race already.
Yeah, like the Cincinnati Reds that are 10-26, the worst team in
Oh
Major
my
League
God.
Baseball.
I feel bad for Joey Votto, man. End his career this way, kind of, and they're tanking and they don't want to pay people. It's just another one of those small market teams that just doesn't want to spend money. And it's just like, how can you expect people to buy tickets and really show up to the ballpark for you to put a product on the field like that? So I'm not a fan of not going for it.
Yeah, and then one of the things too with the Cincinnati Reds, I believe that I heard that they were expected to be a good team this season.
Yeah, no, I mean they have some good players. It's just like the Castellanos they let go. They let a lot of guys go, and I don't understand that. I think Jesse Winker was another one they traded, or they let go in free agency. They're like the Pirates almost to me. It's just like every good player that comes through. The Oakland A's are the worst at this. Any good player that's ready for a big contract, they're like, nope, we're going to go as cheap as possible. I don't like that mindset.
Yeah, I was going to say something there, but I'll stop myself because then I don't want to get dinged on that, being that yeah. Anyway, so let's go back to talking National League West and the Dodgers, one of the other, best teams in baseball,
Sure.
neck to neck with the New York Yankees, 24-12. And then that's talking run differentials. They're plus 81. So we have the Padres just one game behind the Dodgers. And then we have the San Francisco Giants 2 games behind the Dodgers.
Right.
So this is just neck and neck. I don't know what to expect out of this, even as a season. We're still early on in the season. There's plenty of baseball to be played, but I don't even know which way any of these teams are going to go.
Yeah, you know what, Mike? I actually thought before the season that the Giants would take a step back this year. You got Posey retiring. You lose Kevin Gausman to the big contract to the Blue Jays, and he was one of their best starters last year. I honestly thought Posey meant that much to the pitching staff just because he's so good behind the plate. So I actually am surprised that the Giants are still playing this well. And they lost Chris Bryant to free agency to the Rockies. So, they're the biggest surprise, I would say, believe it or not, even though they won 107 games last year. But yeah, you talk about the run differential, the Dodgers plus 81. The next closest in the National League is plus 37, which is the Giants. So nobody else is really in the ballpark. No pun intended there. But the pitching in the National League, especially in the West, is really good. So all those top teams, I don't expect Arizona and Colorado to contend at the end, but the Padres, Dodgers, and Giants, it's going to be tough all the way till the end.
Yeah, it's going to be tough for the Arizona Diamondbacks. They're pretty much breaking even. They're 18-20 home and away, pretty much, 10-11 and 8-9. So seems like the Diamondbacks, they have a good run. They go on a winning streak. You take 10 steps forward, or you take 2 steps forward, and then you take 10 steps back.
Yeah.
So I don't know what to make of that right now. Give me till All-Star break, and I can tell you, but by now we'll know, okay, we know which way this is going to go.
They are going through a tough stretch right now, and they're, I was checking today, they might get swept, a 4-game sweep from the Dodgers, so it's not a great series for the Diamondbacks, but somehow their pitching has kind of held it together, and they hit enough, and so, I think they're 4-6 in their last 10 from what I can see. They're in it. It's just they don't have the firepower. They just don't. They don't have the big name free agents. I know Madison Bumgarner's kind of having a resurgence right now, which is great to see. But outside of that, they don't have. They're one of those teams that lets guys walk. They had Trevor Bauer in their system. They've had all kinds of stars come through that system, and they let them all go. So. It's just a different way of running a team. And, I used to play in the Diamondbacks organization. I wish them all the best, but they're not paying big money for the top of the line stars. And this is what you get.
Yes. So when it does come time to pay the big bucks, they dig themselves into a hole, or they decide to go the other way.
Yeah.
And it's hard, Brett, when the 3 teams ahead of you are willing to open up those paychecks. The owners are like, okay, so you win how much? Okay, let's go ahead and just get into our petty cash. We can go ahead and pay you from petty cash,
right?
And just make that happen. And the Dodgers, the Padres, and the Giants, that's why they continue to be the top 3, the 3 creams of the crops when it comes to the NL West. And the Diamondbacks are where they are, and the Rockies are where they are, because when it comes to the disparity in spending money and bringing in free agents, and free agents actually wanting to come to these organizations, you get what you get.
Right. And the Padres used to be like the Diamondbacks. They didn't really start spending money until like the last 3 or 4 years when the whole regime changed in the front office. So to see them give Tatis $300 million and Manny Machado all that money, and they got Yu Darvish now, Blake Snell, they got all these dudes coming in, Clevenger they got this past, like they are going for it. So when you are bold, and it's like this in football too, Ed, you know it all too well. Like what the Rams are doing, right? If you're willing to spend and go and pay a little bit extra for a top of the line talent, they're usually going to produce for you. So I'm all about teams and organizations going for it. Again, I'm bringing it back to giving fans a reason to come to the games. Like they want to watch a winning product. So if you're willing to go there, then the fans will support you for that. No,
definitely. You both said it well there. Now I'm going to go ahead and to get into some damper news. And it's just unfortunate that this is happening not only in baseball, but just in sports. And that has to do with Tyler Skaggs, who was, someone that you play with, Brett. Yeah. And that comes to the suspension of Matt Harvey for 60 games by MLB for distribution of oxycodone. And it's just even thinking about this and even talking about this just brings chills up and down my body, which this is the reason for this is that he is who had given the drug to Tyler Skaggs, which caused his overdose.
He was one of the people that did it. I think the Angels communications director was the real one of the main ones. I think Harvey was just also a user and got caught in this whole thing too. But yes, he did distribute some drugs, which is the issue. Obviously, the big problem was that fentanyl was in one of the drugs that was given. So it was laced with something that obviously shouldn't have been there. And it's an unfortunate situation. And some of the other guys that were on the Angels back then in 2019 admitted to using as well. It's just, Skaggs used more than others or just had a bad batch, whatever it was. Obviously he had an issue, right? So
right.
I don't think it's anyone's. It is people's faults for supplying that to him, but at the same time, that doesn't happen unless you're asking for those kind of drugs as well. So it's not like he was giving it to him for nothing. You're not just handing out oxycodone for no reason to people that aren't asking for it. So as much sympathy as I feel for Tyler's family, and I do, it's hard to put it all on somebody when it's being requested by the player for you to distribute those drugs to them. So, like I said, it's a terrible situation. And when you type it in on Twitter, like the whole Harvey situation, you get one tweet that says 60 games is enough, and you get someone else who's outraged that's like he should be suspended for life, So it's just a bad situation. I don't know. What do you guys think about it?
Oh, it's a terrible situation. Brett, what kind of teammate was Tyler?
Yeah, he was great. Like he treated me well. We had a lot of fun together. I wasn't aware of what his off the field stuff is. It's not like he's doing it in front of people that much. He and I didn't really hang in the same circle, so I'm not exactly sure what he was up to. So it's hard to comment on that stuff. But he was, he was great to me. He was a high school draft pick, so you got to remember he's really young and had a huge signing bonus. And when that happens, sometimes it's like a childhood star. When you get a lot of money at a young age and you're not mature enough to handle it all, maybe not the best guidance around you, stuff may happen if you're misguided. So I could see that being an issue as well. When you're a top, pick at a high school, there's a lot of pressure on you. So, it sucks. And, but I never had anything bad to say about Tyler.
No, Tyler, I had the opportunity to cover Tyler when he was with the Diamondbacks. Great person, great guy, just fun, just fun human being, just funny, but it's just unfortunate that, that this occurred. But one of the things it does for me, it does anger me that this goes around in sports. He's not the first, of course, to have this happen. We had the situation with Jose Fernandez as well. We had that there. Even Matt Harvey admitted that in a game that he even, admitted use of cocaine as well. So it's just something that does happen. But what can MLB do differently? How can they go ahead and just lock this down for the players are not, having substance abuse, or how to make it easier for them to seek help, or, they go, I don't know. I'm a loss for words, and it's just unfortunate. And I will say that I do not think that the 60-game suspension is enough. You suspend players for longer periods of time for using PEDs.
Right.
You ban players for life for, other things as well. So why only a 16-game suspension when you're distributing drugs and is also a cause of death of one of your fellow players?
Mm-hmm. I think that's fair.
Have Eric Kay as well. So he was let go by the organization for the Los Angeles Angels. He's, going, he went to trial. We'll know the sentencing in June, but I don't think this is enough, and MLB needs to do something.
I think the only way to stop it is if you test for all kinds of drugs, right? I don't think they test for marijuana anymore. It doesn't sound like the cocaine offense, if you get caught once, isn't that severe. So I think the Players Association is trying to fight against drug tests for all these things outside of PEDs. Now, you could argue cocaine's a PED. I mean, they were doing, amphetamines in the 80s. Trainers used to distribute pills all the time like it was nothing. So you got to start there. You somehow monitoring what's being given by the teams. I don't think you can stop a drug addict from getting what they want. I really don't. But I think if you want to implement drug testing on all drugs, that would be where you can hopefully nip it in the bud a little earlier than, if you're allowing these guys to do these drugs on the side. It's hard to control people on outside the stadium. So, and when you got a lot of money, you can buy your way through a lot of things. So to answer your question, I think more excessive drug testing is the only way to really try to crack down.
If that happens, Brett, would you see some pushback from the Players Association on that?
I think so. That's the problem. And the Baseball Players Association is the strongest. So of all the leagues, I think, not having marijuana on the list took a while to get off. So they're walking a slippery slope there. But, to your point, Joanna, why not? If it's going to save lives, why not do that? It's just, do you change the entire drug testing system for one overdose? Or is that enough to say we got to fix some stuff here? Yeah.
It's that, this is the one most recent, but we've had others.
Sure, there's others.
How much more is it going to take before action is going to be taken?
Right. Yeah. No, it's a fair point.
Because unfortunately, it will probably end up happening again.
Yeah. Definitely. I think it's just, that was the guy that, that had this stuff with the fentanyl in it. That was a guy that worked for the Angels, not even one of the players, so it's like, It's not even just the users, it's the people around them that have connections. And like I said, when you got a lot of money, man, you can buy your way through a lot of stuff.
No, totally. Yeah. That the guy is Eric Kay, who was the communications director for the Los Angeles Angels.
Yeah.
So he faces a minimum of 20 years and 20-year prison sentence.
Mm-hmm.
So it's still, we'll definitely be up to date and keeping an eye on this as this develops and what results of Kay's sentence.
Mm-hmm. I'd be surprised if also, by the way, if that was the first time he gave Skaggs drugs as well. Like, I find it hard to believe that was the only time it happened. So this just happened to be the worst case scenario.
Right. Yeah, I'm doubtful of that it was the first. Like you say, it's a repetitive occurrence. So, but I hope something changes and something is done.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So unfortunate to end the show this way, but we have to have these difficult conversations and have these type of talks and shed light and educate people on this.
You sure you don't want to talk about the Suns before we go?
We already talked about the Suns actually right before you came on.
Okay.
So I've talked about it enough and I vented and I've had my therapy by now. So I'm good.
Okay. All right. Just checking.
If there's anything you do want to say on that, you are more than welcome to.
I'm good. Just checking.
But Brett, it's gonna take her a while to get over it because she was actually in the building and witnessed that debacle.
I know. She's been, helping cover the team. That's very difficult to watch, especially when you get a Game 7 at home. Like you gotta win that one. So very disappointing. I feel your pain.
Yeah. So, all right, Brett. Well, before we let you go, thank you for coming on. Always a pleasure having you. I will promise that it will not be so long before we have you on.
Sure, anytime.
Especially now with baseball here and pretty much being the main focus. But can you let our awesome listeners know where they can find you and your awesome stuff?
Sure. Thank you for giving me the platform here at Too Tall Sports Podcast. That's where everything is. My Instagram, TikTok, on Twitter, it's at Too Tall Sports. So you can just type in my name and find anything there. YouTube channel, you can watch my podcast interviews, and then Apple, Spotify, everywhere else. So just type in Too Tall Sports Podcast and you'll find it all.
Wonderful. Awesome. Once again, thank you, Brett. We'll definitely be in touch and have you on again soon.
For sure. Great to see you guys. Anytime, you let me know.
Thank you. Likewise.
Thank you, Brett.
All right. You got it.
All right. And that was awesome having Brett on, and just, I'm fortunate to have these type of situations occur in just not only baseball, but the world of sports, And then just to touch on that sentencing for Eric K, it is scheduled for June 28th. I did just come across that. So just, as we'll go ahead and keeping an eye on this as this story develops.
Well, I'll tell you what, if he does get the minimum of 20 years, that's not enough. That's nowhere near enough for him contributing to losing a young life like that. 20 years is nothing.
Yeah, I agree. So I'm looking forward.
How do we end this on a happy note, Joe?
So that's where I was going. I'm looking forward to tonight's game with the Dallas Mavericks, much as it kind of, in a way, it pains me to say that, but it will be a great series against the Golden State Warriors. So I will be definitely having an eye on that game and see how this game 1 goes, because I think this game 1 will set the tone for the series.
Oh, absolutely. So does Dallas come out? Does Luka come out and have a great game? Do the others again step up for Dallas and help them get game 1 in San Francisco? They've got to get at least one of those games. They can't go to Dallas down 2-0. So can they steal a win? Can they steal a game tonight, or will the Splash Brothers take over and they get game 1? It'll be a fun game to watch, Joe. In between you doing homework, I'm sure you'll take a break and watch some basketball, clear your mind for a little bit.
Yes, you have to take those breaks to keep your mind sane, with the homework. But anything can happen in this series, especially after seeing what happened with the Dallas and Phoenix Suns and what Dallas was able to do, like we mentioned earlier on the show. It's up for grabs. Anything can happen. Even whoever does win game 1, as we saw with the Phoenix Suns and Dallas Mavericks, can still turn around the other team can still turn the series around and then dominate from there. So, but I think until you get to game 3, at least for me, I'll be able to say, okay, this is the team that I see it's going to be dominant. It's going to take the series, unless it seems to be more of an even playing field, even series, then it can go for game 7, which I think is going to happen with this series.
I agree, Joe. I think it's going to go 7 games. These two teams are not here by accident. They're they're outstanding basketball teams, and they play really good defense. They've got star players. There's a lot of star power on both of these teams. So it should be a great series. Let's see who really comes out of this thing, who battles it out and represents the Western Conference in the NBA Finals. Yes.
Did I ask you who you have for your NBA Finals prediction?
Yeah, we talked about it with Craig. He and I both picked Golden State and Miami.
That's right, Golden State and Miami. I have so many things running through my head.
Although Boston, Dallas, I could also see that happening. I would not be surprised.
I did not give mine. That's why I asked. I know I did ask Craig. I couldn't remember if you had given yours or not. But because for me, as much as I want to see Miami go into the finals, which they have a good potential of doing so, and wanting to see a number 1 make it to the finals, with what I saw happen with Dallas and what they've been able to do, I'm going to go with Dallas and Boston for the NBA Finals.
Okay. That'd be a good finals. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think it will I think whoever does go is going to make for a great finals, whether it's Golden State and Boston or Dallas and Miami or Golden State and, Miami. Like, it's all going to be great showdown.
Oh, of course. Yeah. You're down to the final 4. So whoever comes out of those two, that's going to be a really good series. And I'm excited to see who gets crowned the new champion this year. And it's good to have the Warriors back in a familiar spot, the Western Conference Finals, right?
No.
Oh.
Come on. You're asking a Suns fan.
And a Suns broadcaster. Duh.
Yes.
Yeah, Ed. What are you
so
thinking?
just be lucky that yeah. Anyway.
I was
going
to say it would be nice to have the Warriors in there if the Suns were in there as well.
Yeah, I would say that. That's what I wanted to see.
So did I make up for my mistake?
Sure.
Okay.
All right.
But yeah, what could have been, Joanna? Phoenix and Golden State would have been a great Western Conference Finals, but Phoenix didn't hold up their end of the bargain.
Unfortunately, that's the case.
That is the case.
All right, Ed. So we are at the end of our show, going into overtime. So as we sign off, let our awesome people know where it is that they can find you in social media.
Of course. Twitter at EdCole43, right there on the screen. Instagram at EdwardCole301. On Facebook, Edward Cole. Look me up. There
we go. You can find me, Johanna-Rosalye, on both Instagram and Twitter at JRosalye. That's JROSALYE. And then you can find me on Facebook. Look up Johanna-Rosalye. And then you can find Inside Sports Network on Instagram at Inside Sportsnet and on Twitter at Inside Sports_. Make sure you go to YouTube and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Look up Inside Sports Network. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. This was Inside Sports Talk.